Hi, and welcome to the Corporate Expat Mom Summit, the interview series that will help you get it all done without burning out and thrive abroad. I'm your host, Elena Gomez Rodriguez, and I'm a trauma-informed mental fitness coach. And today I'm with Martina Jeric-Ruzovits, and she's the intercultural business communications coach, trainer, and consultant. Hi, Martina.
Hi.
Great to have you with us. I was really doing my best with your name because I know each expat is so special, our names and the pronunciation. So I hope.
No, you did well. Thank you.
Thank you. Good start. So now we can start. Well, I invited you for the summit because we are talking about careers as part of what stresses out expatriate moms. We want to do it all. We want to have career and we want to have like happy family and be loving moms. So with you, we'll focus on that career piece. And from my own experience, I know that this is really challenging moving across countries. It's not just about the language, getting the right accent and the words, but it's usually what gets lost in the translation. Like all those things we are not even aware of that work differently in the intercultural communication at work and in business. So I would love to unpack that with you and get your advice for everybody here. And maybe the best place to start is your own story, your own expatriate intercultural lost in translation. Tell us about that, please.
Well, I don't want to go that far back in time, with my story, not to bore anyone. But I mean, my background is in tourism and traveling. So I've been around and in different countries working and living. And so I've seen a lot of cultures, different countries, different behaviors, taboos, all kinds of things, depending on where you are going. And starting with the tourism industry, I've been in contact with so many different cultures. And it was interesting to see them, when they come to Vienna, just to give you an example, that is, yes, you're here as a tourist, but it's like how they act and how they react depending on what you're saying and the other way around. It's like, oh, I've said something wrong, or they're looking at part is yes, very yeah, that can happen a lot. Depending on where you travel. And also when I traveled to the States and lived in the States, that was a huge difference, let's say, from being in Europe and living abroad, and like how they communicate or how open or closed they are. It's just amazing. And I have to be honest, like I wasn't aware when I went there. So at that point in time, when I moved to the States, I was quite young. And I guess I made the same mistakes as we all did, perhaps, moving abroad, or a lot of people do, not preparing enough.
Yeah. So maybe let's start there for those who have not yet moved abroad. Just help them prepare because preparation is everything. So let's help somebody prevent the mistakes. What would you say is the must do or must be aware of?
So I would say there is a difference in traveling alone or traveling with family. If you travel alone, it's sometimes easy to like prepare because you don't have to take into consideration finding schools, finding a good neighborhood, and finding the big apartment for 4 people. So that might be an easier part. But traveling alone, as some of you might know, is you need to find relationships or build new relationships when you're abroad. But in general, I would divide that. So either individual going abroad or really family going abroad. And based on that, you have to prepare differently so that you don't have that culture shock. And let's start with the families, because there will be moms, so it might be more interesting than just individuals. It's besides really looking for schools, neighborhood, and things like that, you need to get prepared. You need to get your mindset prepared that things might change and probably change depending on where you go. And I remember having a talk with someone, she also moved with the whole family. And she said, okay, moving from her home country to within Europe, it was not such a big issue. But I remember she moved to Austria first and then to Germany. And she said, there's a huge difference. Like she should have prepared for Germany a lot more than for Austria. And so one of the things that I would really suggest and recommend is to read up on not only, the travel guide things in the back of the books, saying the currency and some of the things, the tipping, that's the normal part that you will find in those books, but really get some more information on like the people, perhaps even if you have already a job, check the company, check their values, check their background and the people. And if you have any chance to do so, if it's not like a huge distance, go there and stay there for a while, not only for 1 or 2 days, because that's, you are in that where we would get to the culture shock. And before having the culture shock, you end up in the honeymoon state. So everything's fine. Everything looks pretty big buildings because I see them in the background of your lots of people, different cultures, and that might be for 1 or 2 days, or maybe, a week or so. But if you do not get like more details on how they do business or just their habits, their customs that you might not be accustomed to.
Yeah.
So yes, that's one of the first things that you should do. And if you move with your whole family, get prepared as a family. Don't make the mistake of one person preparing, taking all of them with you on that journey, and then kind of dragging them a little bit along. Just involve them in the decision and what they need to prepare so that they're all ready. Yeah. So that would be a small.
Thank you. That's for those who are preparing. Yeah, don't do just the tourist preparation, but really expatriate one, more in depth. Do you have any tips on how to avoid the culture shock, or is it always like part that we cannot avoid, like going from that honeymoon phase to the phase when there are black clouds over our head and everything is just going wrong? Everything that can go wrong get even worse. Like, is there any way how to avoid it?
Well, I think it depends a little bit on your personality as well. Because when I moved, I was not prepared, but I was, let's say, maybe young enough to say, I don't care. So that was easier for me. But I think that, that culture shock will come to a certain degree, maybe less, maybe more, depending on how different the culture is. Like it could be just like the shock that you don't have a certain type of food that you're so used to and that you love back home, and you don't have that there. But it could also be like completely different values in terms of women, in terms of diversity, how they handle things in the company. So it could be a huge gap of a culture shock. Like it could be a tiny thing, or for example, that you're quite happy that in America 24/7 open, stores, and that might be good. Yeah, but on the other side, people are working 24/7. So you need to be prepared that you might end up working a lot more, and perhaps even having less holidays. So that's also.
That goes back to the preparation phase where you should have talked to your HR and find out these basic things for sure.
Yeah.
I would be interested now if we move on that timeline and if we talk to those who are already living abroad for a while and they still feel like the communication is just, it's not meeting each other. They feel like how I felt in China. That was the biggest for somebody coming from Europe. That was, of course, inevitable. But even here in France, for me, I found out it was not, I realized it was not just the language, but it was the way how people talk, what they expect. And I felt like a second class employee sometimes, even though I was in a leadership position. So do you have any advice, any tips for professional moms here who are listening now, and they find like, I just cannot put my finger on it, what am I doing wrong?
First of all, you're not doing anything wrong. So let me tell you this. If you notice there is something different, then it is most likely a cultural thing. And it could also be the language, not only the language skills as such, like learning the language, but those are the little nuances when you go somewhere, especially because you said China now. You need to be aware of the communication styles they have. And in France, they are more direct, for example, when they talk. And they like to negotiate. So that's one thing. And in China or in Japan, it might not be like this. So when they're already there and they can't really figure out what it is, I would say get some help, get really someone to explain it to you, get a mentor, get a coach, or really look for an intercultural specialist who can tell you, okay, that's not you. It's not you as a person. It's just there are some differences and we need to be aware of them and to point them out and say, okay, in terms of communication, take a look, let's work on that. Is it you? Is it them? What is bothering you? And then really work on it. And if it doesn't work, which can also happen, that there are some things that you cannot like adopt to, then then you have two options: either work through it or you go home. And we've seen that before. So
yeah. Okay, there's so much to unpack. I'm keeping my mental like notes because I want to talk about so much of what you just mentioned. So first of all, I love how you started your response, which was like, there's nothing wrong with you. Because it is normal and it is quite usual. I love that you were talking about getting a mentor or coach, or I would even say like a sponsor.